lots and lots of mathematics is going to get over now. Very good. I'm sure that everyone will be looking forward to it. So anyway, I'm not going to do too much today. I was planning to do something else, but anyway, this is not the time to start something new. First of all, any questions from what we've done so far last time? I'm going to repeat quite a bit of it again. In any case, repetitions are always good. But does anyone have questions about where we are? Yes, no? No questions. So we can continue, I think. Okay, so, okay, let's start. So what did I want to do? I wanted to minimize this. You can see this is where we were last time. You can see this page 112, no? Theta functions. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the first half of it I had done last time. So let me go very quickly through that. So theta function is the sum. Okay. And as I said, when z goes to z plus 1, theta of z plus 1 is equal to theta of z. So theta has 1 as a period in z. Okay. And so I'll see that in a little bit. So there are other things that involve when you specialize to z equal to 0, that function is important. When you specialize z equal to 0 and t equal to I tau, tau greater than 0, that is also important. But the first statement is that theta has these properties. Okay, it is entire in z, and it's holomorphic for tau in the upper half plane. This is only defined for tau in the upper half plane. And when you translate z by tau, you get theta z tau with a certain factor. Okay. So these follow from that sum. Okay. And where are the zeros? So you know that in that sum, when will you get a 0? So it's this thing is 0. So you get that when you translate z by tau, you get this factor out of it. It just involves rearranging the sum. And then theta half plus tau by 2 is this quantity. Okay. And therefore you get this quantity, and notice that various terms cancel. Okay. So therefore this is a 0. Half plus tau by 2 plus n plus m tau. I've not quite said are there any other zeros. Okay, but anyway. So we have to first check whether there are any other zeros. Then there's this little bit about infinite products, which of course is another one of those topics that you should spend some amount of time trying to understand. But we are not terribly bothered about the whole thing. We just need this fact that this infinite product converges provided mod an summation is finite. Okay, and if these ans are functions which are holomorphic, and all of them are bounded by something which is bounded away from 1, then the product also converges. So an converges, and why is the reason? You just look at this business about the log. We want something about this product. Hopefully we can define the log. The log of that product is exponential of the sum. I mean, log of the product is sum of the logs. And log 1 plus x is summation x to the n by n into a minus 1 to the n. And then if mod an is less than half, okay, that sum is convergent. Okay. And it converges to limit of bn's. Okay. So all this I'd done yesterday, and I spent a little bit of time, but there's not much about it. Okay. And if each of these 1 plus an is not equal to 0, then this product converges to e to the b, which is not equal to 0. And therefore the only zeros are if an 1 plus an is equal to 0. And therefore you now apply that same idea to fn's. which are close enough to 1. Okay, and sums of Cn is finite. So Fn minus 1 in absolute value is less than Cn. Summation Cn is finite, then this converges uniformly to a holomorphic function, and we have this business about f prime over f. Okay, and there's a consequence to this that which says that you can, given any sequence of function, any sequence of complex numbers which tend to infinity, you can find a function f which is holomorphic, which has precisely those ans as the zeros of f. So given any sequence an which tends to infinity, the point is that you can find a holomorphic function f which has those ans as its zeros. Okay. I don't really need this right now, so I'm not going to, we are not spending time talking about the proof. Okay, then I pulled this product out of my hat. Not that I have a hat, but what is this product? It is, you take let q equal to e to the pi I tau, and look at this product. 1 minus q to the 2n, 1 plus q to the odd powers multiplied by this, and 1 plus q to the odd powers multiplied by that exponential. Okay, so the first statement is that this is an infinite product, and then this infinite product converges because each of those q's, okay, are less than 1, and when I multiply it by e to the 2 pi I z, and z is in some compact region of the plane, then these products are bounded away from this product after a certain stage. Okay, for n sufficiently large, these products are bounded away from 1, and therefore this product is uniformly convergent on all compact sets, and therefore it converges to a holomorphic function as a function of z. Okay, so there's something to be done there, but it's essentially the same. Therefore, this is an entire function of z, and it's holomorphic for imaginary part of tau greater than 0. Okay, so I'm somehow, first I was talking about the theta function, and now suddenly I'm talking about this particular function, which I express as this infinite product. Remember, there are 3 terms in this product, and therefore this is called a triple product. Okay, so pi is a triple product. So pi x tau is an entire function of z, because if you fix your z in a compact set, let your z lie in a compact subset k, then that thing is uniformly convergent on k. And as a function of tau, in any case, it is convergent. Okay, for tau, imaginary part of tau greater than t naught greater than 0. So what are the properties about pi? So pi z tau is an entire function of z. It's holomorphic in tau when tau is in the upper half plane. So this we have just said in that corollary. Okay, when you replace z by z plus 1, obviously that e raised to 2 pi I z does not change. Okay, and therefore pi of z plus 1 tau is pi of z tau. What happens when you change z, translate by tau? Okay, the statement is again that you get pi z tau into this particular factor. Okay, so yeah, I should have said this when I was talking about theta functions. What this says is that pi or theta is periodic in z with period 1, and it is quasi-periodic in z with quasi-period tau. All that means is that when you translate it by tau, you get pi of z multiplied by a factor which depends on z and tau. Okay. And I know what that factor is explicitly. And pi of z tau is equal to 0 whenever you have z is in this thing. Okay. These are simple zeros and no other zeros. I should have said that in theta also, those zeros that we find are simple zeros. Okay. That will come from what? That will come from the fact that when you take the derivative, you get some term which is non-zero. Anyway, let's not worry about that. Okay. So this is holomorphic in Z and entire in Z and holomorphic in tau in the upper half plane. E to the 2 pi Z is equal to 2 pi Z. When you translate it by tau, when you translate Z by tau, this first factor doesn't change. The second factor changes by Z plus tau. Third factor changes by Z plus tau. Okay. So you have e to the 2 pi I Z. Okay. And what is the extra factor that is not there? Okay. And you should be able to convince yourself that the factor, this factor that I've written on the top line is equal to pi of z tau. Okay, and I have to add and subtract, multiply and divide by a certain factor. Okay, and the factor I have to divide is this. See, the point is that tau, okay, to e to the 2 pi I z into tau. The tau I will absorb into the q, because what is the q? Q is e raised to pi I tau. Where do I have that? Q is equal to e raised to pi I tau here. Okay. So in this product, I have 2 pi I tau. That 2 pi I tau, I want to absorb into the Q because Q is a pi I tau. Okay, but there's a 2n. And then I have to do some adjustment to see that I get all the terms. Similarly, minus 2 pi I tau, I absorb into Q to the 2n minus 1. And then I have to do some adjustment about the n. Okay, and that adjustment gives you this extra factor. And what does this look like? This looks like 1 plus x divided by 1 plus x inverse, and 1 plus x plus over 1 plus x inverse is x. If x is not equal to minus 1, this quantity is never minus 1. Okay. Why? Because mod q is less than 1. But what about mod z? And no, this quantity is never minus 1. Okay, so pi also has this quasi-periodicity in tau. And when does this factor vanish? The factor vanishes, I mean, when is e to the something equal to 0, when that something is a multiple of 2 pi I. And you figure out what that is when each of those terms, and you get exactly these terms. Okay. And then this is where I stopped, I think. Is it? I think so. Okay. The theta is equal to pi. This is the theorem that one proves, that theta, which was that sum, pi is an infinite product, and the statement is that that sum is equal to the infinite product. And how do we prove it? We prove it by taking the ratio. The zeros cancel out. Okay. So it's going to be a holomorphic function because the zeros of the denominator will cancel with the zeros in the numerator. Okay. So the zeros cancel out. So it's entire. Okay. And the fact that those numerator and denominator are periodic with period 1, and each of them is quasi-periodic with quasi-period tau, but that extra factor that you get is exactly the same. Let me show you that again. So what do I have? This factor, e to the minus pi I tau, e to the minus 2 pi I z, and where are we? E to the minus pi I tau, e to the minus 2 pi I z is a factor for theta, and it's also the factor for pi. And therefore, theta divided by pi is also periodic in tau. Okay, where are we? theta divided by pi is periodic in tau, and it has two periods, one in tau, and it's entire. Therefore, it must be a constant. The constant is going to depend on tau, and therefore we'll have that theta of z is some constant depending on tau into pi of z. Okay, and what is this is a gap in what I'm doing. I hope you will convince yourself by reading the book. I hope you'll convince yourself that that constant is 1. Okay, so this says that the theta function, which I've defined to be a sum, actually has a triple product expression. Theta functions have triple product expressions. Okay. Now, so theta of z tau when z equal to 0 is, you just put z equal to 0, that is the term that you get. Okay. And so I have this thing expression for theta 0 tau is that product. And the next statement is that if you take log theta, its second derivative, the expression is this. Okay. Obviously, it's going to have double poles. It's going to have double poles at the zeros here. But these things, okay, fz is equal to log theta z prime, which is theta prime over theta. The internet is not off. Seems to be working. You can see the screen, can't you?
Yes, we see.
Okay. So it's doubly periodic and it has a single pole at this thing, and therefore find the fun. It has only this as an order pole. So this usual story of f prime is doubly periodic. Okay. When you take f is the first logarithmic derivative. Okay. And therefore, when you take one more derivative, this term goes away. So f prime is doubly periodic and single pole in this domain, and therefore, what do you have? This is an elliptic function of order 2 with these periods and double pole at this. This is what I wanted to say. And therefore, this, okay, the pole which has the doubly periodic function, which has a double period, which has a pole. Okay, we know one example, which is the Weierstrass's P function. But now we want the Weierstrass's P function has its poles at points in the lattice, but we want to shift the poles to 1/2 plus tau by 2. So I should take the doubly periodic Weierstrass's P function and translate it to 1/2 plus tau by 2. And therefore, this thing is equal to this up to a certain constant. Okay, so this is a connection between theta functions and Weierstrass's P function. Okay, so all these things are closely related to each other. Now, I had made some comments here which look as if they're completely out of the blue, but which I want to sort of convince you that there is some comment, there's some content in those comments. Okay, so let me just go to this next PDF. I think it's this, and from here. Yeah, so I had made, okay, so let me just read, let me tell you about this. See, we know that P prime squared is a quadratic, sorry, P prime, P is a Weierstrass's P function. P prime squared is a cubic in P, okay? And on page 111, I checked this, we have actually shown that P prime squared is equal to 4P cubed minus 60 E4P plus 140 E6, where what is E4 and E6? These are the Eisenstein series, okay? Again, there's too much that I had done there, but we had got this. Okay, so P prime squared is 4P cubed minus 60 E4P plus 160 E6. Take the derivative of that. When you take the derivative of that, you get 2P prime P double prime is equal to 4 into 3 into P prime squared minus 60 E4 P prime. Therefore, I can cancel P prime, whatever I mean by that, and you'll get that P double prime is equal to 6P squared minus 60 E4. Okay? No, what am I doing? Yeah, that's correct. I'm cancelling the P prime. So P double prime is 6P squared minus 60 E4, and therefore I take one more derivative. So I'll get P triple prime is equal to 12 P prime P. So the Weierstrass's P function satisfies the condition that P triple prime is equal to 12 P prime P. Okay? The KdV equation is, it's a partial differential equation, x and t, and the KdV equation, the Korteweg-de Vries equation, is ut minus uxx plus 6ux is equal to 0. U is a function of x and t. Ut is the partial derivative with respect to t. Ux is the partial derivative with respect to x. Okay. So I'm going to look for what are called traveling wave solutions to this partial differential equation. So I let capital X be ax plus bt plus some translation delta. So capital X is ax plus bt plus delta, and I define u capital X. I define u capital X, that means ax plus bt plus delta, to be equal to uxt. Okay, so uxt is capital U of ax plus bt plus delta. Therefore, I can find the equation when new variables capital U and capital X, and you'll get the new equation is minus a cubed uxx plus 12a is that, ux is 0, and then I translate capital U by some amount, and the equation I get is u tilde is u plus this translated by this amount, and the equation I get is u tilde xxx is 12 over a squared ux, capital U tilde capital ux. Notice that this is the same equation that is satisfied by the Weierstrass's P function. Okay, and therefore I will get that a solution of the KdV equation is given by the Weierstrass's P function evaluated at this term, and then when you unravel what we have done just now, you'll get that uxt is equal to 2a squared p ax plus bt delta minus b over 6a. So what am I trying to tell you? I'm trying to tell you that the Weierstrass's P function gives you a solution of the KdV equation. Notice there's something here, okay? A is supposed to be that a squared p. The a squared is the amplitude of the wave. And the amplitude of the wave depends on the phase phase frequency. You see, there's an ax plus bt. There's an ax here and there's an a squared there. So the amplitude depends on the speed, whatever I mean by that. Okay. So Weierstrass's P function gives you solutions to the KdV. And the Weierstrass's P function, as I've just said earlier, do I have said it here or I said it earlier, has to do with the second logarithmic derivative of the theta function. Therefore, I will get that solutions of the KdV equation actually can be expressed, some solutions of the KdV equation actually can be expressed as the second logarithmic derivative of the theta function. Okay? Very good. What's the big deal about this? Okay? So that's why I've written here, solutions involving logarithmic derivatives of theta functions, because second derivative of log of the theta function, or the derivative of the logarithmic derivative of the theta function, okay, is related to the Weierstrass's P function. So this is an elliptic function. This is an elliptic function. It is called the one soliton solution of the completely integrable, infinite dimensional, nonlinear evolution equation called the Korteweg-de Vries equation. And therefore, you also, I mean, this is again the beginning of, there's a great spurt of interest in finding solutions to completely integrable, nonlinear evolution equations in terms of the algebraic geometric approach, in terms of theta functions on Riemann surfaces. And this is telling you one of those examples. The simple KdV is the first example. And as usual, you can see this is the beginning of a lot of things. Okay. I hope you are completely, so I should say at the end of this that I hope that you are completely zapped by these connections. Anyway, so to come back to this, what I was doing here. So log of theta function is the Weierstrass's P function, and you can find solutions of nonlinear evolution equations. Now here I've made a goof up about my numbering. Okay, so let me correct this goof up. So it turned out that I had not sent you page 111, my original page 118. So my original page 118, I'm going to call page 117A. So page 117A is supposed to come after page 117 and before page 118. Okay. So theta of z tau is this, zeta of z tau plus 1 is not theta of z tau. But then notice that if I replace tau by tau plus 2, okay, then you have a tau plus 2 there. Okay, so what happens with the tau plus 2? So n squared plus 2 tau, and I replace this n by n plus 1 or something. Why can I say that theta of z tau plus 2? When you take tau plus 2, you have n squared plus 2 there. I made a mistake here on page 117A. I should have said theta of z, tau plus 1 is not this, but theta of z plus z, z plus 2 tau. I want theta of z plus 2 tau is equal to. So there's some mistake I've done here. I hope you'll just check out what this mistake is. Okay. So there's a mistake, I think. Tau plus 2, you get n squared plus 2. And then why is that equal to? Just wait a minute. Let me check this out. I've done some mistake here. No, it's correct.
2 pi
It's
I.
correct. It's correct. Huh?
2
Yeah.
pi I is 1. It is correct.
It's correct. Yeah. Huh? So theta of z tau plus 2 is equal to theta of z tau. So the point is, when I translate tau by 1, I don't get tau. But when I translate tau by 2, I get the original thing. Okay. Now the question is, what happens when you replace tau by 1 by tau? So recall that we had proved this result, that e raised to minus pi t n plus a squared is equal to t to the minus 1/2 e raised to minus. Where did we get this from? We got this from, just to remind you, we got this from the fact that the Fourier transform of e to the minus pi x squared is itself. The Fourier transform of e to the minus pi x squared is e to the minus pi psi squared. So Fourier transform of e to the minus pi x squared is itself. And then you apply the Poisson summation formula to this function. But you apply the Poisson summation formula to this translate n plus x plus a. Okay. So on the left hand side, you will get this and multiplied by t. Right hand side, you'll get 1 over t and t to the 1/2 and this. So this formula we had seen earlier as a consequence of the Fourier transform acting on e raised to minus pi x squared and the Poisson summation formula. Okay. And at that time, I told you that we have this corollary that theta of this theta at t is theta minus half theta 1 by t. Okay. So what is the lemma? So I'm going to put I'm going to keep x real, and I'm going to put tau equal to it where tau is greater than 0. And I'm going to put z equal to x. The statement is theta of z. Now remember, I'm changing tau by minus 1 by tau. And my claim is that this is equal to this. So what is happening? When I replace the tau by minus 1 by tau, what is happening is that this tau gets multiplied into this z, okay? And you have a tau there, and I have a factor in front of it, okay? What I mean to say is tau is it, so xi divided by t is t to the 1/2 e to the minus pi. See, tau I'm replacing by it, and theta of tau is it, z is x, and you have it. Okay? So this is the lemma. And why? So this lemma says what? This lemma says that this sum is this sum. Okay? And I hope you will be able to convince yourself that this last statement, sum e raised to minus pi n squared by t e raised to 2 pi I n x. Sum minus pi n squared by t e raised to 2 pi I n x. The right hand side, you have some factor, t to the 1/2 e raised to minus pi t squared, which is this factor that I have here. Okay, and this term that I have here is e raised to minus pi n squared t, e raised to minus pi n squared t, e raised to minus 2 pi I n x. So this equation that we have, which is this equation that we have, follows from the Poisson summation formula for the function e raised to minus pi x squared. Okay. Now, therefore, you look at, now, you see, I proved this for tau equal to it. So you fix your z, And you look at now analyticity in the tau. So what I'm saying is that these two functions are the same along the y-axis, positive y-axis. But as functions of tau, both these functions are analytic. So if you have two analytic functions that agree on the positive y-axis, these two functions must agree for the whole of tau. So now we have theta of x comma minus 1 by tau is this times 2 pi I x times this. Okay. So I should go back to my other sheet. So you can see that there's some screw up. And then the next statement is that for x real, for all tau in the upper half plane, this is what I've just told you. Okay. When x is real for all tau, this equation is true. Okay. And therefore for all, because why? Because they agree on the y-axis. This is now page 118, which should have been page 119. Okay. So these are functions of tau. They agree on the positive